everyone, and welcome to Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. Today we are very excited because we are welcomed by an amazing birth mother who placed her daughter for adoption over 25 years ago. Let's welcome Jaime.
Hi, everybody.
Jaime, can you kind of give a brief overview of who you are when you first came to Adoptions from the Heart and what your adoption journey has looked like over the last 25 years?
Sure. So I got pregnant when I was only 16 years old. I was 17 by the time I gave birth, and I just didn't feel that I was old enough, ready enough, or quite frankly, smart enough at the time to parent a young child. I didn't really feel my mom and I had the resources to care for her at that particular time. So we looked into adoption and we searched through Adoptions from the Heart. And we were so happy to be able to participate with adoption and to pick out a wonderful family for my daughter. We looked, I actually took 4 couples out of the booklets that we reviewed, and I just kept going back to these parents for some reason. I just kept being guided back to these people. Then we watched their video, and we liked everything they had to say, and we met with them, and we still agreed with most of the things they had to say. I think we should have been a little bit clearer with the family about their willingness to be fully open. There have been some things over the years where we haven't felt fully informed. And now that my daughter is 26, she's no longer living at home with her parents, and they won't even tell me what state she lives in. So there's some things that are difficult now, but it's understandable too, because she's an adult and our contract for the adoption really has ended. Right. So we're grateful to still be able to get updates from the parents, but at this point we would love a little bit more openness, but we understand that that wasn't part of our contract.
And Jaime, when you say we, you're referencing you and your mom, right?
Yes, I apologize. Yeah, my mom is obviously the doting grandmother and would love to be more of the doting grandmother. So that, every time I get notice from the parents, including pictures, she's the first person I call, and I immediately read the letter to her and, text her whatever pictures we get so she knows what's going on.
So back in 1995, when you first came to the agency and you had matched with the family and you guys were kind of having some of those initial conversations, what were the expectations? Had you talked about what the future contact would look like at that point?
We did negotiate within the contract that we would receive notice once a month for the first initial 6 months, because babies change so much in that initial period, and then at least once annually there forward. And there was a discussion because they have a son they adopted just 6 years before my daughter, and they had a closed adoption with his parents. So they did mention that it would be difficult for them to personally meet up, seeing as their son would never have that option with his adopted or with his birth parents. So we understood that, certainly, because we don't want to disturb the other child. And, I agreed if they would allow me to send gifts, I'd send for him as well. Unfortunately, they didn't really give us an answer on that. So,
okay. So what I'm hearing from you as maybe kind of a learning lesson moving forward for other folks is that there really should be clarity at that point in time of setting down the expectations. And even for you as a birth mom, or for future birth moms, if there's something you really want, you should feel comfortable expressing that.
Yes, and I would agree with that wholeheartedly. At this point in time, when I send notices to the parents and I ask certain questions, I don't get all the answers I'm always asking for. Sure. And that can be really, really hard. The not knowing how my daughter feels about her adoption story in the first place is really difficult for me. And I've been seeking a lot of mental health and support groups in order to get past those things.
I find it really interesting you talking about that your daughter's brother was also placed for adoption. And it sounds like because that child did not have as much openness with his birth parents, there was this sense of what would that look like for your situation, which is just an interesting dynamic, because we always try to say that it doesn't mean that it has to be exactly the same, right? You could have participated in the openness and almost been like a fellow birth mom for him as well, so he could understand the birth parent perspective.
And I have always asked about him in my letters and correspondence with them. I have always asked how he is doing. And I love the fact that the parents will share details about him with me as well as my own daughter. And it's so wonderful to see the dynamic between the brother and sister, not even blood relation, but getting along as they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's heartwarming to see that.
Sure. And just to clarify, so the family has committed, and they do send or had sent every year during your daughter's life for the first 18 years, a letter. Is that right?
Not quite every year. It came to a point where typically we had to contact them to get any response back. So, and that may have been because busy with 2 young kids, things like that. And that's kind of understandable, but it was difficult sometimes having to always reach out with them to get the responses back.
Sure.
Because it's hard writing letters to people you don't know very well.
I was going to ask you, we definitely have those situations where, life goes on and families have things going on in their life, of course. But if you could say something or give any sort of advice to a family who the child is now older, 5, 10, 15 years old, what does it mean as the birth parent who's waiting on the other side for those updates and not really getting them as regularly as you would like? How does that feel for you?
It's like half of my soul and my heart is missing from my life. And not knowing how my daughter feels about her adoption story it's indescribable. The hardship that goes with that feeling, because the parents can say, oh, they don't feel negatively towards you, but that may be what the child shares with them. That may not be their actual feeling. And at this point in time, based on what the parents are telling me, they are holding all of my correspondence I've written to her and not even providing it to her to read. And she's an adult. There's no, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that's the proper way to go about it. But I don't know, again, what she has said to them about wanting that correspondence. So again, that's the hardest part, is not knowing.
Yeah. And I know you and I have talked about that a lot. It's not even that you're necessarily like asking for anything, like in terms of contact or whatever. You are just asking for, how is my child doing? I just want to know from her, how is she? How does she feel about her adoption story? And if she's not comfortable with wanting a connection or wanting that relationship with you, you would be okay.
Why is that?
You just want to know what it is.
And I'd love to know why that would be. If she doesn't want communication, what's the reasoning behind that? And that's not something that I'm able to get from them. And I don't know if it's because she doesn't share it and they don't ask, or what the case may be.
Sure.
So again, that's the not knowing part that makes life very difficult.
Well, and we talk a lot about healthy boundaries in the adoption triad, right? With open adoption. And I mean, Jaime, you have been so respectful of those boundaries. You're very patient. you're very aware, you're able to understand that it's not just about you, it's about this family and this wonderful girl. But you're not even really asking for like a whole lot. You're really just wanting to know why. So I think that shows how strong of a character you have, that you have put in the work. You've done a lot of just figuring out things, finding out how you really feel, being able to figure out tools moving forward. And I think that really shows in how you're able to speak on your story.
I appreciate that. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of mental health. But and I continue with it even to this day because of the hardships with the not knowing. But I still would do it again, all over again. People ask me that all the time, would you do it again? Absolutely, because she still had the best life I could have possibly asked for her with this family. And I cannot complain about the life that she has had. But it's this difficulty that just puts a lot of emotional heartache on me as a birth mom.
You had mentioned your mom previously, and I was hoping you could touch on that as well. People don't often realize that openness can extend beyond just the biological parent. Talk to us about the role your mom has played in your life over the years and how this has impacted her.
So we actually did not get along when I was young and growing up. We used to butt heads continually. When I got pregnant and we started the adoption process, it brought us so close together because of the support that I received from her and the love that she showed me during the process, that we are best friends now, and I share everything with her. She has written Katie her own letters over the years and sent them through the agency, just like I have. I don't ask to read anything, she offers, and I'm like, no, you're not going to say anything wrong. So, and occasionally the parents have also written letters to me and her. So it's been really nice to have my mom involved in the process. And again, I always contact her as soon as I get that manila envelope in the mail with correspondence. And we're always so excited and we cry. And, I remember we've really gone through this whole thing as a team. That's why I always say we when I talk about the adoption story. Yeah.
Sure. Talk to me about the support you receive. And, I know it's been several years of working with Adoptions from the Heart, but just what it's meant for you, even at this point, to have a community of support in your life.
So it's, I actually just got with a birth mom support group within the past year, and I can't tell you what that has done for my mental health in this situation. It's definitely helping quite a bit to know there's others out there that share in the same feelings I have, and I'm very upset that I haven't looked into it a little sooner. It could have been much more beneficial, but I've always sought my own private mental health. But anytime that I have received supportive services through the adoption agency, people are very understanding. They're willing to work with you. They try and do everything within their power. And it's really wonderful to see the support that comes.
That's great. That's great to hear. How do you feel open adoption has changed back from the 90s to now that you have had the experience of kind of connecting with other birth parents? Maybe you've learned a little bit more about other open adoption situations today. How do you think that transformation has gone?
Technology has improved so much since 1995. And again, I don't know how my daughter's brother feels about his adoption story either. And I would never want to be intrusive on him in any way, shape, or form, or upset his dynamic in this family. So I have always respected the boundaries because I didn't want to alienate anyone from another person. So best I can do.
And how has sharing your story on platforms like this, how has that impacted you as a birth parent?
Well, it definitely helps me to know that I'm hopefully helping future generations and other people's adoption stories. I know how difficult mine can be from time to time. So if there's anything that I can do to help, I just want to be involved.
Absolutely. In the short time that I've known you, Jaime, I have also seen just this sense of confidence in you. You seem to be a little more just aware, and I think you've always been proud of the decision that you made, which is something I have a lot of respect for you for, because no matter what has gone on over the years, you always go back to this place of, I gave my child a good life, and that's something you hold in your heart. While I don't know if you necessarily were given the openness pieces that you would have wanted, I think you're still confident in the family, the love they had for your daughter, and ultimately she's a wonderful person today, which was initially part of what you were trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. Definitely the goals that I set out for her have been accomplished. It's the goals I set for myself that were not yet. So, and I can't really blame the family for that either, really, because it's not their fault that this situation occurred in the first place. You know, that's something that they didn't control. However, with the kids, you know, at this point, it's just, they're old enough now that I think they can come to some more decisions than I think the parents are giving them credit for, quite honestly.
Well, and that's the hope, is that as they move into their adulthood, right? Because they are adults at this point, you know, your daughter will, when she's ready, be able to reach out on her own and on her own terms and have that connection with you, because I think you've always kept that door open for her. It's about when she can walk through it. Right, right.
Can't wait for the day.
Well, and Jaime, I can tell you as a social worker who, you know, every day we do placements on, you know, regular basis, I think about your story, right? And I remember the words you shared with me of how much you've gone through and the sacrifice you continue to go through for your child, not necessarily being given all the openness that you wanted. And it reminds me to make sure that expectations are really put on the table by all parties. So making sure that expecting and birth parents are counseled so that we can find out from them, what do you really want out of this? What is the goal? What would make you feel comfortable? And same thing with the adoptive parents, making sure they put on the table what they're comfortable with, so that everybody can go into this feeling like they're getting what they want out of it.
And the thing is too, with birth parents, that can change over time, because when you're in the middle of the adoption process, you might feel one way, and later on in the process, when your child's a little older, you might feel a different way.
Absolutely.
So things can change as well, and that changes with our emotional state, dealing with the adoption process and the whole journey. So it's not always that the feeling remains the same throughout the whole journey.
And everybody should be conscious of that, right? And everybody should go into this realizing that, okay, we set this structured plan of what it's going to look like, but that might change based off of how everyone's feeling and what's going on in their lives and whatnot. And being okay with that space of, we can change things up. We can accommodate.
Yeah, I would appreciate for future generations that they have the option to make some changes if necessary during the journey based on new needs that arise.
That is extremely well said.
I just hope that women who are looking into this understand it is going to be a difficult journey, but with the proper support, you can make it through. And even in the difficult times, relying on your faith, relying on your support system, your family, your social workers, your mental health providers, all of those things can get you through the journey and the process if you trust in it. And if you, again, leave those expectations on the table and have the opportunity to voice what you feel throughout the journey.
Absolutely. Well, Jaime, again, I want to thank you for having the courage to come on this call and, share your story with the community. It's a very vulnerable, sensitive thing in your life. And we are hopeful that we can help impact future open adoption relationships and other clients that might come along.
I do hope it helps people. That's my goal.
Well, I have so much respect for you. Thank you again for all that you do. And thank you to our audience for listening to amazing women like Jaime, and stay tuned for future episodes.